Now our next speakers, Katie and Allison, when you talk about innovation, it's not just the product, it's also the process. And they're going to show you a co-design journey of how they innovated both in their research and what came out of it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here and horrible to follow Mitch Resnick. Katie and I have been working together with our teams, with my team at the University of Maryland and with her team at Nickelodeon for almost 4 years. And we realized that it hasn't been work. It has been a co-design journey. And when we talk about co-design, we're talking about really co. It's about two different teams from academia and from corporate world. It's about kids and adults, and kids, we're talking 7 to 11 years old, and adults in everything from the education world to the computer science world to the design world. And we're also talking about truly being in it together. It's not about, hey kid, we're gonna invite you to give us some feedback, do you like it green? It's not that at all. It's from the very beginning, there's a partnership. And what we're gonna do is talk to you a little bit about that partnership and some of the outcomes. Now, one of the interesting outcomes that has come out of this is not been in the technology, even though we make awesome technology together, don't we? Yes,
Absolutely.
Okay. It's been in, actually, in this interesting equation. We're at MIT. We're going to teach you about an equation. Repeat after me. Random.
Random.
Plus ridiculous.
Plus ridiculous.
Equals fun.
Equals fun.
Now, you're going to keep learning this now. We're going to test you. All right, here we go. We're testing you. This is, I'm going to press a do not touch button. This is, again, one of the outcomes of our recent collaboration together. And watch this carefully. There'll be a test. All right. How many people think that was random? How many people think that was ridiculous? Okay, next one. You did very well in that test. Let's see if you can do this as well. We're pressing, and again, every time you press the do not touch button, you never know what's gonna happen. All right. How many people think that was random? How many people think it was ridiculous? Okay, you passed the test. Isn't that amazing? Because it's really hard to figure out what's the difference between random and ridiculous fun, of course. And we like random and ridiculous fun, and that is what has emerged not just in the technologies we've made, but also in our collaboration together. And Katie's she is gonna properly define this randomness and this ridiculousness.
Right, so I'm sure nobody really needs the definition of random or ridiculous, but just to set where we're at here, random in what we're talking about here is a little bit more, I would say, the mathematical sense of random, right? So it's the unexpected, it's something out of place, something unpredictable. You don't really think it's gonna happen. In fact, you have no idea it will happen, right? So that's where the random comes in, something unexpected. Ridiculous is more the absurd, right? So it's something that's just so absurd or preposterous that you can't believe it just happened. And then the other part of ridiculous, which I think is important to note, is that it's also exaggerated, right? So it could be the reaction that is exaggerated. One of the examples I like like to give is, have you guys seen the YouTube scare videos, the compilations of people being scared on YouTube, right? So kids love these. And every time we ask them about YouTube, they show us one of those. And the idea is really, the random part is that something happens on the screen. So it's the actual action that happens on the screen. So something pops out and scares the person. But what's ridiculous about it is the over-exaggeration of the reaction of the person. So I don't know if you guys have seen the one where the guy screams and punches his computer screen. That is hilarious, right? And when you add those two together, what you really get is fun. And it's really the two together. So just somebody being scared, maybe not so ridiculous. When you add the two together, absolutely hilarious.
So where did this equation come from? It did not float out of the air from the heavens and say, and God said there will be random, ridiculous fun. It actually, believe it or not, came out of our work with kids. And it, in fact, came from a number of different kids and adults working together. And how do we work together? It is with multiple different methods of what we call co-design. And when we work together, it is over a long period of time. This is not just a, hey, one day thing, what do you think, kid? It is about ideation, and it is from the very beginning of the project together that we start to iterate. And we may do this with very high-tech forms of collaboration and communication. We're talking art supplies, pipe cleaners, socks, cotton balls and so on. We're also doing this with large pieces of paper where everybody can get around it. We're not doing it in one whole giant group of 500 kids and 600 adults. We're doing this with a smaller group of 10 kids and generally 10 adults. If Katie has her way, she usually brings 14 adults from
Nickelodeon. 30.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But anyway, but the idea is that it's not about a teacher-kid relationship of 1 million kids and one adult. This is about breaking the power structures, and we break into small groups with as many kids and adults, and it's an elaboration process. So Katie may say, I think it should be green and fluffy, and I say, oh, and if it swallows a banana and I won't use all those words anyway, and outputs over there, then I think it should go there, and we go back and forth and until we're not sure whose idea it was. But the important part of that co-design process is in actually the debriefing. And so Katie and I may work together on a project in a group, but there's 4 other groups working in these projects. We debrief together, we come up with what the big ideas are. In some sense, what we're doing is analyzing this, and then we start to iterate on those designs. But this is not the whole thing. People say, oh, I can do this, I know how to use paintballs and so on. It's actually a much larger process.
Right, so we initially started our partnership with Allison a long time ago with Nick.com, and so we were doing a series of 6 sessions around Nick.com. And this is sort of the process, and you'll notice the blue bubble here. It starts with what do we want to know, right? So for each session, and it can be overall across the 6, but generally you start with the first session, what do we want to know? So the second part then is how are we going to ask it? So this is where we decide which of the many lovely methodologies that Allison and her team have come up with to decide, like, okay, what's the proper way to figure this out? And there's lots of different ways to do it. There's lots of different things we might want to know, and so we match those two together. When we actually get down to Maryland, this is us on the train, by the way, via Sella. We get down to Maryland, the first thing we do is start with the question of the day. So that's really to prime the kids, right? So if it's a question around searching or something like that, we might ask them, how do you find out about the coolest new video game? And so everybody goes around the circle and the kids say things, and then the adults usually have determined answers sometimes to help the kids think in, beyond their friends, more or less. So we start with question of the day, and then we get into the groups. Usually with us, it's one Nick person. We get one Nick person, maybe 2, one Maryland person, and then 2 kids in each group. Usually, 3 or 4 groups, I would say?
Yeah.
3 or 4 groups. At the end of it, which I think is actually the most fun for everyone who comes down and why we want, so many people from Nickelodeon want to join us when we go down there, is that the kids present. So they get up and they say, this is what we made. And as Allison said, it's very much a process of, it's not necessarily that every idea is the kids' ideas, but when you put it all together, you come up with this really great idea through the co-design. Then the next part is the adults identify the trends. So someone's usually writing the big ideas on the board, and then we debrief that night and the next morning to talk about what the themes are. And this is really where, so I run a research department, and we do a lot of surveys and focus groups and usability and that kind of thing. It's very defined, right? And when you get here, this is really, the designs are actually the data. And so you're trying to identify those themes of what the kids have come up with and what the groups have come up with. You take those themes and you say, all right, well now knowing that we want to get to, place Z, we're at place B, what's the next step in this project? So it might be redoing the same thing or, asking it a different way, or it might be iterating upon it. It might be bringing back ideas for kids to look at and comment on. And then we're back where we started. What do we want to know? And we start the whole process again.
Now, this is a process that we have a well-oiled machine with Nickelodeon. We do this with obviously many other organizations, but it was actually Nickelodeon, our partnership with Nickelodeon, that really actually, I would say fleshed out the adult part of the thing, where they actually stay an extra day just to go through the trends, just to debrief, so that when they leave, they're walking into their adult playrooms, okay, and with a presentation where they're saying, okay, this is where we're going to go, and that's powerful. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show you just one example of how we went from co-design to, wasn't it an Emmy? Yeah, it was an Emmy, an interactive Emmy. Yes, that was a part of the project. Anyway, all right, it is the Do Not Touch button. It was a part of, it was actually became a part of the larger Nick app. You can get it online today, it's free. It's not, the only thing is not the Do Not Touch button, but it turns out for many kids, you'd think it was the only thing because it's random, ridiculous, and fun. So Katie's gonna explain a little bit about that, what led to actually designing that button.
So the Do Not Touch button, we didn't set out saying, hey, we want to design something funny, right? We actually went down to Maryland with a pretty straightforward task. We had learned from the kids a little bit earlier that, sometimes getting around all the content in nick.com was very confusing. So we wanted to see if the kids could help us design a better navigation. So, if you go back to the blue thing, what did we want to know? So can we better organize the content so that kids can find stuff easier? That was the question we went in with. How we did it, so we brought in all of the navigation elements. We cut them up into 2 different sizes, so it was all the show images, it was words like games and videos, it was the stuff from the club, your avatar, that kind of stuff. So we gave them all the cutouts. They had big pieces of paper, and we just asked them, put this together in the way that you would want to go through the content. The next thing we did was, co-design, so we talked about that. And then the kids presented, and surprise, it was really limiting what we had given them, right? We said, hey, here's the existing navigation, change it. And as it turns out, that's not really very possible. So what they did was they took some extra pieces of paper and they made new buttons. And one of these was the Don't Touch button, which, as you see, has turned into a very important piece of our app and maybe part of why we won an Emmy. But I think the important thing to realize here, though, is not so much that this button initially was like, oh, hey, somebody wrote a Do Not Touch button, that's hilarious. It's that every single group had created something that was random or funny on their menu, on their navigation, right? So we had things like one group had a button when you click the menu button and it flips over, and on the other side it's a game, right? Another one, you click it and the screen, it rains or it snows depending on what the weather is outside. Another very enterprising child wanted money to come out of the computer when you hit it. So, it's not so much about, okay, this one Do Not Touch button, but the fact that all of the groups had done this, and that all of the groups had said, we want something funny and random to happen, and so we took that and ran with it, and the Do Not Touch button came into existence.
Right, so in our co-design journey, it was not about testing hypothesis, okay? It was absolutely a journey where we didn't know what the end game was gonna be, and we never know what the end game is gonna be. It is a bit of a leap of faith, it is a bit of process and science, but it's well worth it, because it brings surprises. And the surprises it brings is certainly in the outcomes, but also in the process. So, for example, we asked all of our kids what were the kinds of surprises that they found from working with Nickelodeon and the process. And here's a couple examples.
What surprised me about Kidsteam and being a design partner is how different it is from what I thought it would be. I thought it would be more learning and that kind of stuff, but it's really a lot funner.
A surprise is that Nickelodeon put a do not touch button in their app, and I wasn't really expecting them to do that.
How come?
I'll let you know why later. Anyway, okay. And now these kids, we also, when we were talking to them, it turns out they have questions for you about surprise. So I hope you're ready to answer this child's question.
How do you surprise people to make them happy?
Okay, you're gonna need to up that question sound again. Here we go. Let's try it again.
How do you surprise people to make them happy?
How do you surprise people to make them happy? Answer. How do you surprise people to make them happy? I don't hear you. All right, thank you. Okay, very good. And here's another question.
I would ask them if they've ever been surprised about being surprised.
Have you ever been surprised about being surprised? When was a time? When was a time? Scott, you're shaking your head.
Sure. The first time someone gave me one of those jars to open up and the snake popped out. You'd seen them before, so I was shocked that I was so surprised.
Aha, there you go. Another answer, another answer. Anyone? Anyone? Oh, you are a lively bunch. Come on. No, nobody was ever surprised at being surprised. Okay.
Daughter jumping out of the closet, just a constant thing at home where she does it.
The constant thing that she continually does this over and over again and thinks you're going to be surprised. There you go. So there is the surprise of surprise, and that's that's a really important part of being a kid, and it's also an important part of making new technologies for kids.
Right, so I think, random plus ridiculous equals fun. It's not just something that we learned throughout our partnership, but it's also really, I think it describes the process of co-design, because the outcome of the process might be random and the process itself might be slightly ridiculous. And so we just have a few kind of examples of how this, well, not examples, lessons of things that we've learned throughout the process in our partnership. The first, underneath random, one is unpredictable outcomes. So as you saw, the do not touch button was not at all what we were looking for the day that we got it. But it has become a very important part of the Nickelodeon app. It's really about, even in a very narrowly defined assignment, so we gave them a very specific thing, we wanted them to go in a very specific direction, and they just went somewhere completely different. And that can provide lots of learnings, and I think it's very important to remember that unpredictable outcomes is okay. Elaboration pieces, so this is really about those seemingly unrelated ideas. So, a menu flipping over and having a game and the screen raining, those are two completely different ideas, but the theme is the same, right? And those can add up into something really important and can really help define what the next steps are. So a lot of what we've been doing in the past probably year or two has been looking into other ways of really, inventing types of content, types of technology that can help us achieve these same ends. And then the third one, variety of kids. So kids are all different and they have a variety of ideas. And the job of the adults, this is really more about the adults here, it's to take those really random ideas. So, the boys love games and the girls love, houses, and when you put them together, what does that mean? And that's the job of the adults. So as I said before, it's really about the designs are the data in this case. It's not survey data, it's not, asking a question and getting an answer. It's really like, what have they done? And you take all of that and you look at it and you say, well, what does this mean, really for us? And how could we implement this in a nice way? And then in terms of ridiculous, laughing is good. So it's really important to have a sense of humor when working with kids because they're ridiculous, right? So, and it's really important to be imaginative. So one of the things when we bring new people down to Maryland, you have developers at any level from SVP all the way down to somebody who just joined the company, and they have business goals, and you have to tell them, leave those at the door, be imaginative, be free to be a kid again. This is your chance to really sit down and experience that joy from the child and to see what they're thinking, but also participate in that process. And then the control thing, it's just impossible. You might want it to go a certain direction, and maybe you have business goals that need it to go a certain direction, but you just have to stop even pretending to have control. What we've found repeatedly, and I think Allison has seen this with other clients as well, from what I've heard, is that when you try to push it in a certain direction, the kids are going to rebel. But what's interesting is when they do rebel, you sometimes learn something even more valuable, and that's okay, and it's important to remember that. And then the last thing is messy is okay. And there's kind of two parts here. One is that the process of co-design is messy. I have a little bit of not trouble exactly, but it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't been down there within Nickelodeon what this means, because they're used to me saying, hey, we're gonna ask this question, and they don't care what the methodology is, and at the end of it, I'm gonna write a report, and I'm gonna tell you the answer to your question, right? And that is a very clean process, and they know how that works. This, I tell them, well, it's gonna last a year, there's gonna be 6 or 7 different projects, I have no idea what they're gonna be, and you may or may not get a report at the end of it, because I don't know what the projects are gonna be. And it's messy, and it's you learn amazing things, though. So as you've seen, I don't know that we could have asked a survey or a focus group that would have gotten to random plus ridiculous equals fun, or the do not touch button. And the other part of messy is that kids aren't clean, glossy, creatures. They're messy, and they're ridiculous, and it's important to kind of allow them to be messy and ridiculous. And one of the things that I think a lot of our developers take away is that, the job as a producer or a developer when you're producing kids content or kids technology is to allow kids to be kids without getting in their way. And that without getting in their way is sort of the UX part of it. And those are really important lessons, I think, that we've learned.
So we're going to give a challenge to all of you. Take off your business suits and stop doing your surveys. Put on some messy clothes, get on the ground, hang out with kids, but have a relationship with kids. Ask them questions that you care about, that they care about, and make awesome, amazing things together, because that's the possibilities that a co-design journey can give you. And with that, we thank you.
Okay, questions? No.
There's one over there.
Right there. Yes.
How do you see co-design as different from its evil stepsister, design by committee?
Design by committee. Woo! All right. Here's the bottom line: is that we have a shared goal, but everybody has different roles to play. So at the end of the day, I don't tell Katie that what she's going to pull out of this big pot of ideas, she's got to go and make exactly what I say. It's an elaboration process. And even when each of the groups are presenting their ideas, in some sense, what we say to kids, it's a mixing ideas. It's not about one person's idea or one person's visions, but it's the way we mix it. And guess what? There's usually only one person or a small group of people that are mixing those ideas. So yes, design by committee, yuck. But co-design, where you're bringing things together, it's like a large funnel, and you start to bring more and more ideas, and you start to coalesce in one area, and then eventually people are picking ideas and running with it. And it depends on your role. I may be the team leader, and guess what? When I write down the big ideas from those things, I'm actually pulling out the ideas in my vision of where it's going. She's doing the same kind of thing when she takes it back to Nickelodeon.
How do you recommend for smaller companies to go about finding groups for beta testing like that, or finding groups of kids to work with?
Oh, how do we find groups of kids to work with? Actually, it turns out that at first it was just random, okay? It was extremely who was around, because we're not talking about, this is not a control group. This is not like I want one person that is short, one person that's green, one person's, we're looking basically it's like hiring short graduate students. And so these are kids that can communicate, that can collaborate, that are not afraid of ideas or of adults. And what we do is each spring we turn to our team and we say, hey, you guys know any friends that want to come in? We get a waiting list of people that just contact us out of the blue, and we just roll people in, and the kids will, generally the kids stay for 2 to 3 years, come twice a week for 2 to 3 years, and it's an amazing experience for all of us.
One more? Do we see hand?
Oh, there's one up there.
Up there?
Up there, Barbara.
Good afternoon. We get asked a lot in our labs to do testing for other people who are developing, and I've been trying really hard to figure out a way to make that work because there's such a need for it. But I cannot figure out a way to do it efficiently where the developers themselves aren't in the room while we're doing it. That seems for us to be such a critical part. Do you agree with that, or do you think there's any way you can offer this for developers who can't come spend time with you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, a lot of what we do, we have the back room or the developers can watch, or we might Google Hangout it or something like that. I really feel that the true value of it, though, is in experiencing, sitting down on the floor with the children. It's why we always try to bring 30 people, because everybody who hears about it wants to come. And it's become a really important thing for the Nick Digital teams to experience. And so they want everyone on the teams to be able to experience it. I think barring the ability to actually, get them to be on the floor with them, I find that video helps. Reports just, it doesn't get it across to them. It's the feeling of it, I think, that is missing from a report. So when you write a report and it says, whatever it happens to say, they haven't experienced the journey of how you got there. And I think that's what's really so valuable about the co-design process. So I don't know. That's not a very good answer, but
no, it's a wonderful answer. It's let people in, get as many people a part of the process as possible. Let them all be stakeholders, because it's a little bit of religion, it's a little bit of faith, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing I'll say too is that sometimes we do projects that aren't necessarily business, business goals. So we'll just come down, like we did one around wearable technology just because, and a lot of times just the act of sitting on the floor with the kids is enough. It's not even that it had anything to do with something we're making, right? So there might be a way to sort of implement a more casual format for it where people who can come. I would say that's another way to do it.
Well, thank you.